Welcome to the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. My name is Julian Cox. I'm the Chief Curator here. Thank you so much for joining us for this morning's mini symposium, which is organized by our Department of the Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, the Jolika Collection of New Guinea Art, and the Caroline H. McCoy-Jones Department of Textile Arts. Our program, Museum Fakes, Forgeries, and the Quest for Authenticity, is the third in a series of now annual gatherings that addresses topics germane to the entire museum field, but especially the fields of textile arts and the arts of Africa, Oceania, Asia, and the Americas. In 2010, at this same mini symposium, we discussed scientific testing as a means to evaluate works of art. Last year, we investigated the complexities surrounding the concepts of ownership, cultural property, and questions of provenance. Today, we'll explore fakes and forgeries in the museum context and the quest for authenticity. Experts will address specific case studies that reveal the complexity and intrigue that accompanies this compelling issue as it affects curators, scholars, collectors, and dealers. Before we get started, however, I'd like to briefly share details of two important current exhibitions on view here at the De Young Museum at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. The first of these is on the second floor. It's the Art of the Anatolian Kilim, highlights from the McCoy-Jones collection, which is on view through June the 10th of this year. And this exhibition showcases more than 24 Anatolian kilims from a world-class collection given to the Fine Arts Museums by H. McCoy-Jones and his wife Caroline in 1988. Presented upstairs in our Textile Arts Gallery on the second floor, these Anatolian flat-woven kilims range in date from the 15th to the 19th century and include a variety of design types and regional styles, as well as superb examples of artistic and visual prowess. The kilims in our permanent collection are considered the most important group of objects of their kind outside Turkey, and they've not been on public view for 20 years, so please don't miss them if this is your first occasion to see them today. The second exhibition about which I'd like to speak is entitled Sacred Images and Chiefly Works from Central Polynesia, and this small show is on view in our second floor Oceania Gallery, upstairs and to the right. This exhibition presents 20 rare works created, used, and collected in the late 18th century and first decades of the 19th century in the Cook Islands, the Austral Islands, and the Society Islands. They highlight natural materials and artistic techniques used to create images of worship, sacred objects, and everyday articles. One of the most compelling aspects of these works is their variety of realistic and highly abstracted figurative forms. They've been highly valued for their aesthetic, religious, and cultural significance by the most powerful people of Central Polynesia, and also by Europeans who, of course, collected them for museums and for private enjoyment. In relation to that exhibition, there will be a lecture in this auditorium this coming Saturday at 2 p.m. by David Shaw King, the author of Food for the Flames, Idols and Missionaries in Central Polynesia. So if you're in town for the Tribal Arts Fair, do please come back for that on Saturday. We'd love to see you again. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Jill D'Alessandro and Christina Hellmich, for expertly organizing today's events, as well as for Bianca Finley-Alper, who provided absolutely essential administrative and logistical support. Without further ado, I thank you again for joining us, and I'd like to invite Christina Hellmich to the podium, who will introduce this morning's speakers. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you so much for coming. This program is made possible by the Friends of the Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, and the Jolika Collection of New Guinea Art. And I would sincerely like to thank our speakers for making the journey to San Francisco and to sharing their research and their insight with us this morning. I'd also like to thank John Freedy and Harry Barron. When they learned about the subject of this year's mini symposium, they sent me literally boxes of potential objects for us to talk about today, and I brought a few of them to share with you in my introduction. Esteemed Harvard art historian Esther Pastore, who unfortunately could not be with us today, has said, "Fakes tell us about ourselves, what we think we see when we look at things of another time and place." The presentations by our speakers provide a view into this vast, complex, and sometimes contentious subject of authenticity. They will explore fakes from diverse places and time depth through specific case studies. Some of our presentations also seek to interrogate and expand the language, particularly the definitions we use to identify works as authentic or fake. This recent Wall Street Journal article, "The Finer Art of Faking It," has a subheading, "The Trickier Art of Authentication." Counterfeit and pirated products, according to the article, around the world are valued at $600 billion, and I'm guessing that doesn't even include art. If there is demand, there is no limit to how many Chanel purses can be purchased around the globe. Though some are fakes, as you see on the top, and some are authentic on the bottom, more can always be created. And this article is so interesting because it talks about how sophisticated the faking techniques are becoming. However, the finite supply of oceanic art creates a competitive environment for dealers, collectors, and museums. There is a temptation to increase the pool of available works with fakes or authentic works modified for the market to fit the aesthetic desires and criteria of collectors. Fakes and forgeries have been with us as long as visitors have been collecting visual culture in the Pacific. Fergus Clooney, a specialist in Fijian art and culture, recently gave a talk about the history of so-called Fijian cannibal forks, calling them one of the most widely faked artifacts in Oceania. 19th century beachcombers in Fiji carved them for the tourist market. In 1917, when speaking about the collection of Methodist missionary Dr. George Brown, who was active in many parts of the Pacific during the late 19th century, his biographer, C. Brunston Fletcher, said that, quote, "It is full of real island curios, not a fake among them." For all collectors and curators, discernment and desire are formidable adversaries. Collector John Freedy talks about wishful thinking as the bane of collectors. He purchased this fake paint dish from the Sepik River region of New Guinea long before he acquired the piece once owned by Charles Rattan that you will find in the gallery upstairs, and this is the piece that you'll see upstairs. And I did bring the other piece, and you're more than welcome to come down after all our presentations if you'd like to have a closer look. Freedy and dealer Anthony Meyer theorized that the inspiration for the late 20th century dish, probably carved in Europe, was a photograph of the older work in Philip Rawson's Primitive Erotic Art, published in 1973. You can see that the carver, in a zest for detail, even carved the string around the neck that is visible in the photo, but now lost, and you'll see it's no longer present up in the gallery. And I think you can all see that in the slide on the right. Unlike the original on the left, the fake on the right stands on end. And without a photograph of the back, the carver could only guess at what should be represented. As Freedy states, fakes like this one are not comparable to their masterpieces, but the desire to have one like the one in the book can damage even seasoned judgment. Esther Pastore says that we have to be willing to look at our less desirable characteristics in the mirror before we can put the forgeries back on their stands and learn the lessons they have to teach. Harry Barron is an expert on the carvings of Mutuaga, an artist from the Milne Bay region of Papua New Guinea, active in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Barron identified Mutuaga's previously unknown corpus of works after years of intensive, and some might say delightfully obsessive, study of wood carvings from this style region known as Massim. Barron's work has been so comprehensive that we can now readily recognize Mutuaga's distinctive style and subject matter, such as this drum seen here, carver or figure with drum, seen here on a lime spatula in the collection of the British Museum. Sir Cecil Abel, son of a well-known Milne Bay missionary, Charles Abel, states that Mutuaga developed a distinctive style that enables us 100 years later to look at a carving and say, this is a Mutuaga. But can we discern 21st century Mutuaga copies? This spatula was offered for sale to a prominent resident of Milne Bay province who asked Harry Barron if it was a genuine Mutuaga, and I brought the spatula for you as well today. Barron found some style anomalies. However, he was reassured by other aspects of the carving style as well as its stated provenance. And last year we talked a lot about provenance, and provenance should surely be investigated. In this case, the provenance was a bit off, which probably took Harry in the wrong direction. But he advised the buyer at the time that the piece was genuine. Later, the buyer learned that the spatula had been carved by Lazarus Modage, and he had seen Harry Barron's book on Mutuaga at a hotel where copies were for sale. It's always great when it's your phone. So I apologize. Okay, it's finished now. At least you can just direct all the dirty looks my direction. Okay. So Harry learned, so the carver, Lazarus, had seen this piece, had seen Mutuaga carvings in a book that Harry published on Mutuaga in a hotel in the capital of Milne Bay province. So since then, 3 other identical copies of the spatula carved by Lazarus have been conveyed to Harry by anthropologists, collectors, and dealers who found them in their travels. So interestingly, as noted by Barron, Lazarus did not create copies of a single lime spatula featured in the book. He combined aspects of several pieces that were pictured on the same page. So the result is a pastiche in Mutuaga style. For a time, the spatula managed to distort Barron's understanding of how Mutuaga solved the challenge of securing the drum to the body. And he's looked at these particular lime spatula carvings and has tried to sequence them. So it caused him to question the carving dates of certain pieces in the corpus of his work. Why, as Harry Barron puts it, are forgeries bad for art history? Harry's own experience shows us how in areas of art history and visual culture with a limited number of experts and a small corpus of works, fakes, forgeries, and what Harry calls pastiches can have a big impact. In our search for truth and authenticity, fakes change our perceptions of the past. As Mark Jones, who curated the exhibition Fake, The Art of Deception at the British Museum in 1990 states, fakes loosen our hold on reality, deform and falsify our understanding of the past. From a commercial perspective, at least one of these spatulas by Lazarus has made it to auction outside New Guinea. Though not sold by Lazarus as Mutuaga carvings, the wishful thinking of a collector or curator might transform them into forgeries at another point in their lives as objects, thus exposing the seller and Lazarus to censure. This ancient mask from the Karawari River of New Guinea is on view in the gallery upstairs, and it's held in trust for the government of Papua New Guinea as a work of national cultural property. Barry Craig, a former curator of anthropology at the National Museum and Art Gallery in Papua New Guinea, and currently a curator at the South Australia Museum, has no doubt that it is, quote, the work of a master carver who lived well before Europeans arrived on the Sepik. Though he does doubt the C14 tests that John Freedy completed that indicate a much greater antiquity for this particular mask. Its name and owner was recorded before it left Papua New Guinea, sometime after 1979. During the subsequent 12 years, Barry Craig photographed 2 additional masks with the same name that were similar in form and iconography. Barry recorded that the masks were used to cure illness. You can see clan animals and plants, and they're represented on both the front of the mask in the gallery and also the other masks that Barry photographed. Arjun Appadurai, his work follows things on their journeys, in motion on paths and diversions, in what he calls their social lives. He asserts that the commodity phase of a life history of an object does not exhaust its biography. Here is a fourth mask on the right that John Freedy recently purchased on eBay. Originally, he thought it was a fake. He had seen several impressive fakes of of the mask on the left, made in Europe shortly after the publication of the mask in the book on the Jolika collection that was published in 2005. But it seemed to be something else. Given how little we know about the ancient history of carvings in New Guinea, it seems quite plausible that the mask we have here in the gallery, that we consider authentic, was at one point a replacement like the three others we know today. While we often rely on aesthetics and other formal qualities to help us identify authentic works, the artist and or community that created works might have been much more concerned about the efficacy of these pieces and the issues of cultural copyright. Ross Bowden, an anthropologist who has worked extensively in the Sepik River area of Papua New Guinea, reveals how Western notions of original works of art and copies are radically different from Kwoma society, where, quote, all works of art are thought to be replicas of earlier pre-existing objects. Kwoma believed that a copy, provided it is well made, possesses all of the cultural and aesthetically significant features of an original or earlier work. An original, in other words, possesses nothing that a well-made copy does not possess. Bowden also explains that among the Kwoma, authenticity is determined by two criteria: whether or not the object has been produced correctly, stylistically, and whether or not the individual or group who manufactured it had the right to do so. So I think we need to add another definition to our discussion, which is replacement. Replacements are not simple copies. They served a function within communities where they originated. They are not fakes. We must take the time to understand indigenous definitions of what is and isn't culturally authentic in the areas we collect. In many cases, authentic works leave the hands of artists to be manipulated when they enter the art market, and this constitutes the betrayal. It is not a question if we will ever be associated with works of questionable authenticity, but when. And the object will stand or fall as a pawn of our politics, economies, and desires. Thank you.